unmuted myself, and I got the post out in a minute. Can you believe that shit?
There we go.
Brother. So I don't know if you watched Wednesday's show. I know you were occupied, but I gave the best show intro and then realized after I did it, I was on mute.
Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised at all?
First person I blamed it on was you, just so you know, in case you didn't watch the show. I'm like,
I didn't watch it.
That is totally Ryan's fault because Ryan's usually there to tell me to take it off mute.
There we go. There we go. Well, you know what? Shout out to everybody. So when we were on Restream, for everybody knows we're using StreamYard right now. When we were on Restream, when we played the video, like it would auto mute for us. So we didn't have to like mute ourselves and like have to like kind of, you know, we didn't have to do what we're doing right now. So we're still even getting used to it. What are we, like 2 months into using StreamYard now? So you'd think that we'd be up to the point, but I don't know. It's just one of those things, right? And I was actually on Restream the other day and they were having like, Restream has some really cool features. It's funny, like it's like that girl, like when you break up with somebody and then they glow up, they start going to the gym more, and you're like, fuck, man, I missed out, man. But it's just like, no, I'm good where I'm at right now. I'm good. It's on my journey. So these little things, these little technical things, you know, it's not too much of a big deal, but it's good. Kudos to you for doing it today. You know, you got to share it out and you got yourself off mute. So there we go.
Yeah, buddy. I'm educating myself on the geographic anatomy of the buttons.
Yeah.
What did you just say? What? Ryan.
Yeah. Rogers and Bell cannot cut off that internet faster, eh?
So, brother, here's the thing. So let me share this with you because I started thinking about this, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a ton of construction going on around my area. 3 or 4 new subdivisions, 700 plus homes in each subdivision going in. So they're building out infrastructure. We're putting in sewers instead of septic beds, and like so the small town's becoming a city, if you will, right? Like in the end, that's what they're putting the infrastructure in for. So apparently yesterday, because of the way Canada is set up for all you in the US, there's literally a couple of cell phone towers, and every company shares those towers. And so I guess a construction somewhere in town snipped a line. And that line was for my Bell data and my home data or internet. And with Rogers, who I'm with, like your telephone, your TV, and your internet is all internet, right? Mm-hmm. And so literally it went boom, down. And so yesterday morning for the show, as if y'all watched it, I was in my truck because I had to drive out of town to attempt to actually get Wi-Fi. Whereas normally if my house goes down, I just turn on my hotspot like most people and you continue with your day. So it's funny because yesterday was also the 1 year where I finished treatment. And I'll tell you, Ryan, not hearing bings, dings, and I think like I turn my phone over so I don't see the light shine up. I typically, when I'm in the middle of something, I'll like mute my computer and everything, but not hearing a ding, bing, you know, you've got mail, any of those noises for an entire day. Oh my Lord, I was so productive. And then it's funny because I was sharing this morning, as productive as I was, I felt so far behind this morning, so far behind because I only got to start answering emails at 7 or 8 o'clock last night when the internet came back on. And it was the craziest thing. It was like beautiful, but yet, and I kind of felt like the universe was saying, okay, Dan, today is a day. It's been exactly 12 months since you stopped treatment. Do something. Just do what you love. And I recorded courses and I was training and and it was the greatest thing ever. And then there's that. And I was telling you about it before we got on. And I'm still trying to figure out, is it FOMO? Is it whatever? You're so used to these dings, dangs, replying to emails, like, you know, kind of shaking and moving, I guess, if for lack of a better term. And I don't know if that's a good term for it, Ryan, but shaking and moving. And then one day it's like, there's no shaking, no moving. There's like, you figure out what to do because there's no TV, there's no internet, which means no YouTube. There's no rabbit holes you can go down. It's literally, what are you going to do today with your time? And it was super cool, brother.
There we go. Yeah.
So like I couldn't even listen to my books because I don't download them onto my phone. I stream them. So like I had no books. I had my physical book. So I started reading a physical book and I'm like, okay, how am I progressing? Like today's a day where typically all of our instruments that we would do business with, or that we would do and that we use for entertainment, are gone, right? With the internet. How am I going to be productive today and continue to work towards my goals? And it was like, I don't know, brother. I don't even know how to explain it. And I guess maybe you have to go through it, but it was so cool. So cool. It was silent, like silent. It was super cool.
There we go, man. That's awesome, man. That's good to.
You're not, buddy, but that's the way I was feeling.
There we go. Yeah, gotta go through those experiences and understand what the universe is really trying to tell you. So kudos to working on that and go from there. I think we all get that experience sometimes of just disconnecting and putting our phones on, putting silent and just working away and getting to that like deep work. So kudos to that. That is awesome from there. But let's get into the book, my man. This was probably one of my favorite chapters, and I say that quite a bit, but this one, I got it right away, so I didn't need to read this one twice. What I loved about this one is that it starts off with how to do a meditation exercise. And I think, you and I were talking a little bit before off air about like books that resonate with you and like authors and different things like that. And, there's certain activities and certain habits that if somebody says it, I'm going to resonate with them quite a bit. So when he started talking about meditation and how to do meditation, I'm somebody who meditates every single day. I do it for faith and I do it for like personal as well. I do my prayer and then I do Headspace. Headspace is a great app for anybody. I've tried different apps out there, Dan, like Calm and like kind of going myself, but I think Headspace is really the Porsche of apps for like guided meditation. So when he kind of got started with that, I was like, I'm ready for this ride. I'm ready for this ride.
Can I ask you a question on that, Ryan?
Yeah.
And this is more for the audience. So when you first started meditating, obviously it's very difficult to shut the brain off. Kind of walk us through that, because doing it every day, you're obviously getting better and better at it. Using an app like Headspace, why would you use an app over just doing it on your own?
So you actually just answered that question with the first thing that you just said about like you can't shut your brain off, right? So I think with anybody who's getting started, so for everybody who doesn't know, like Headspace is a guided meditation. It's somebody with a calm, soothing voice telling you what to do, and I think, a lot of people kind of get into meditation like, hey, I'm just going to sit here for 10 minutes. And then they're like, okay, is that 10 minutes up? And then they maybe put like a timer on their phone, like the stopwatch or whatever it is, and like basically wake them back up in like 10 minutes. And then they look down, it's only probably been like a minute or 2 minutes, because it's one thing, especially with this book as well, getting to understand time and like realizing what you're kind of doing. So I recommend everybody who wants to get into meditation, go into guided meditation, because it's like putting the training wheels on a bike before you can actually take off, right? So there's so many cool exercises that you do. One of the biggest ones that they teach you in the foundation series is, when you breathe in, count to 1, and when you breathe out, count to 2, but then only go up to 10. So sometimes you'll figure out that you've actually gone past 10, and then you realize, hey, I'm not focusing on my breath. I've been focusing on something else, right? So you're always kind of bringing it back to center, like doing like head scans and things like that. So anybody who's out there, you included, Dan, like, if you guys are getting into meditation, go with a guided meditation first, because we all need help to get started. And then I just like continuing with it because there's different courses you can take in the meditation. You can take like a gratitude one, you could take one for even like doing deep work, or there's so many of options available.
Very cool.
Yeah, like I love
Headspace, right?
Headspace, yeah, Headspace is awesome. They've been around, and you know what? I love to support companies who are just amazing. So, Dan, I know you don't know this, but like during the pandemic, they made Headspace free for all teachers, all nurses, all doctors, all that stuff, because that they were going through that certain time. It was affecting them quite a bit. And you should follow like their LinkedIn page. The LinkedIn page always has like really cool and either funny or different things. So yeah, coming back to it, and the book itself, what I realized was that when he started with that meditation, he started talking about how to meditate, and like then we kind of understand like going into like that unconscious of like the sleepness. And then there was the other part that he mentioned that I really loved, was that we always think about what's in space, but we don't think about space itself. And that's the concept of space. And like, we think of things as nothing. You look at the room around you, right? Like the walls, the flooring, everything like that, the desk, all that stuff. But those are things, but that's like not the actual, like, it's nothing. Like, how do we actually study nothing? And I love how he took this chapter, Dan, and he like weaved in between like Buddha and Jesus, but then he had like some Albert Einstein quotes, so he brought some science into it as well. So I really enjoyed this chapter. Like I said, this was an easy first read. I think it was only about 13, 14 pages, I think it was, Dan. But for yourself, Dan, what was some key takeaways? And I know definitely take some notes and things like that. I would love to get into that with you.
So I was actually the exact opposite. And I don't know if my headspace necessarily wasn't there listening to this chapter, but I kind of listened to it and I went, what the hell did I just hear? And I went back and listened to it again. And it was like the third time I think I got it. It was that space and emptiness, and being present eliminates space and time, and it was just, and maybe it was the wording and the the way the sentences were strung together, but it was some things I got from it is when you're unmanifested and you're when you wake up and you look around, you instantly put labels on things. And he says, don't put labels on things. And I'm sitting there going, wow, because as I'm listening to it, I'm looking around my office and I'm like labeling, but they're just things. And one thing that really got me, where he said, the greatest miracle is this, and I'll read it because I wrote it down literally word for word because it was so powerful. That stillness and vastness that enables the universe to be is not just there in space, it is also within you. When you are utterly and totally present, you encounter it as no mind. And maybe I got, maybe when I heard it, I was like, no mind. And it's a reoccurring theme where when you're 100% present, you're in no mind. It's like there's no thoughts. There's just attentiveness. There's, and then it's interesting because then I started thinking about, I remember when Ryan said when he meditates, it's more like he's standing on a highway and just watching the cars go by, which are thoughts. And not engaging with any of them, not pulling any of them in or digesting them or mulling them around. It was just more, okay, let them go. Because I remember when I first started meditating, it was those thoughts that would kill me. Like I'd be off on this off-ramp tangent out back on country dirt roads and be like, I'm supposed to be on the highway. Bring it back, right? Wayne Dyer's was a good getting into gap guided meditation that I really love. That was one for me, but that was probably the biggest part of this chapter because it was a short chapter. For me, that just that one kind of small paragraph has so many meanings. And I think, we take that paragraph and we look at it a month from now, it's going to have a whole different meaning, which I think is super cool.
Couldn't agree more. And that's the one thing, that's why I love reading this like the second time, because that different page. But this was one of the chapters, Dan, that he really introduced like life and death that I thought was really fascinating when we're talking about, people going into that near-death experiences, right? So, and they've explained it. I think he was talking about chi in terms of, when people kind of go through near-death like experiences, it's just like nothing, and that's the one thing for me. I've been not necessarily researching, but I'm always kind of fascinated by death, like because there's not been somebody who's like gone, who's like died and like come back and like told like the story. Like it's one of the big unknowns, right? So it's something that we're all gonna face, right? But we just don't know what's gonna happen when that actually happens. And I agree with the statement that he made that where it's like, when we die, we just kind of go into that unconscious. It's just gonna be like nothing, like kind of like nothing. The empty, the empty, it's just like whatever your thoughts are, if you're going to be at a pearly gates or whatever your mind kind of makes up at that point, but it's just like just nothing. And a part of me kind of scares me a little bit reading about that because I'm like, what do you mean? I want to go meet my dogs, I want to go meet my family, I want to go meet everybody, but it's just like maybe that's later on, right? Because like for us in Hinduism, we believe that the soul takes a journey of a whole year. That's why like when somebody dies, I know you don't know this, but anybody who's watching out there, when somebody dies in the family in Hinduism, no one's supposed to get married in the family. You're not supposed to like buy a brand new house, or you're basically in a period of mourning because the soul is traveling through the different hells, through the different heavens until they kind of find like their journey itself. So reading that part, and like when he brings up that concept of like, you know, life and death. And there's one quote, I don't want to screw it up, but he was talking about Jesus, and he was like, you know, Jesus didn't say that he was the truth. I think he said like, go seek it, go seek the truth, and then come find me. I
Yes.
think that was the gist of it. And one thing we kind of believe too, that I changed my mindset. And sorry everybody today, and Dan as well. Like I'm just a bit. I woke up with a sore throat this morning, so I'm kind of feeling a little stuffy here. But you know, when you see
Brother, don't
God,
worry about it. I think
yeah,
you've dealt with me for a long time with those kind of issues, so I didn't
it's
even
not.
notice, man. I
Yeah, it
didn't even
sucks, man.
notice.
I think I want to mask up again. But you know, one of the things that he said was like, he mentioned how Jesus said that, you know, if you splinter a piece of wood, you'll find me there. You know, and something else.
Mhm.
It's just like if we were to treat our work, the way that it is, it's like we're doing either God's work or we're doing our work. Like just like with you yesterday, you know, like you being disconnected, it was just like, okay, well, that was your calling, you know. And for you sharing that, you know, that was your last day of treatment a year ago, which would have been September 14th, you know. So think about that too. We're like halfway during the month as well, right? So like there's always significance in that 14, 15, all that stuff. So for all of us kind of reading this amazing book and this amazing chapter, I love, like, I can't keep coming back to it, but I love that he's like really resonating with like life and death. And like Dan, you mentioned the audiobook is like a conversation. This book, like this chapter, is a conversation too. Like he asked, there's a question, and then he kind of answers it. But I felt like there was more dialogue in this chapter than the previous 6, if that makes sense. Like this
Yep.
kind of felt like I was reading like a Q&A, you know. So
Yes.
I enjoyed that part.
I did notice that as well, and especially from a short chapter. I think it amplified that more than if it was like a 25-page chapter. Because I think they asked 4 or 5 questions in this chapter, which normally, if it was a longer chapter, 4 or 5 questions wouldn't seem so much. But in 13 pages, that, you know what I mean? It's huge. And it was. It was a back and forth. And the questions that were asked were questions I asked. Like in my head, I'm going, well, what on earth? And then they ask a question. I'm like, well, that's probably pretty close to what I would have asked. And then he answers, which I think was really great because it's a clarification. Because in this book, if we pay attention to words and take the words verbatim, we're going to get lost. 100%. And I think the ability to ask those questions, right? It's why so many books I've always tried to connect with the authors and say, what did you mean by this? What did you mean by that? Because I'm used to, anyways, and maybe I need to work on it. I'm used to taking words verbatim. And this one thing this book is teaching me is, and he said it right at the beginning. Like, I think the first chapter, he said, like, listen, don't get hung up on the words I'm using. Like, understand what I'm saying as a whole. And the words are just ways to get you there. But if you don't like the word God, replace it with something. If you don't like the word religion, you know, and it's like, and I'm glad he started with that because, I mean, I guess he had to, the way Eckhart Tolle speaks, and even in you know, New Earth, it's the same thing, right? He's just, his vocabulary is so far advanced compared to what mine is. And I say that because the interpretation means everything, right? And it's interesting. I mean, I love it. Yeah, I'm rambling, but
No. It's perfectly fine because, like, you know, like we said, like these chapters, we're already chapter 7 of this, and then for everybody who's watching out there and reading along, we only got about 3 more chapters left of this book, and I'm intrigued to see how he closes out this book because, like, I have like a little, I didn't want to cheat and kind of like read up because I really didn't remember too much when
but
I
you
read it a
did.
long time ago. No, I didn't. I didn't cheat yet. So, no, funny enough, like when I said we're gonna do the book club, I think I was on chapter 3 when we were kind of started. So I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna read past chapter 3. So we went back and did chapter 1 with the audience and ourselves here. So like these are all brand new to me in terms of my second reading of this. So I, you know, the one lesson I'm kind of taking away is, you know, getting rid of like the past and the future, and kind of like, and that's kind of what the meaning of the book is. I really think is like understanding like the now, and I've been doing that quite a bit. Like even when I get into my car, like sometimes I get into my car and like I'm an autopilot, hit the start button, music comes on, hit reverse, camera comes on, and then start driving. I started to count to 10. I just got into my car, just count to 10. I don't even put on my seatbelt yet. just count to 10, and then get on with my duties, and kind of just be present in the drive. I've been present on the drive really well too. I haven't listened to like Spotify, I haven't played like music or anything like that. I played like radio and stuff like that, but I'm noticing, like the one thing that I always liked about my wife is that she's always noticing like people like so far away when they're driving really fast or their license plate or something like that. And that's her being connected like to the now, instead of me just looking at the one car in front of me and the light. Like I only usually really pay attention to the passengers if they're crossing the street and paying attention to the light itself. And, for me, it's like understanding. And now that the weather is getting colder, Dan, I'm actually like being more present in terms of like, how that makes me feel. Obviously, it makes me feel sick today because I'm freaking sick, but like otherwise, I'm gonna be present of like, okay, well, I can't get away with wearing shorts again in the morning, or like, maybe I gotta bundle up a little bit, or how does this feel, or even noticing the birds, like, like, oh, hey, is it the same birds I'm seeing every single morning, things like that. So I don't know, I'm loving the profound impacts on this book, and this is definitely going into, like I was telling you off air, I'm not really a big book reader. I kind of cycle between the same like 5 or 6 books because that's just who I am. But this is definitely going to be, I feel like this is going to hit make it to the book club list on my like mantle of the 5 or 6.
I think it would for sure. So let me ask you a question, because one thing I've always loved to do with physical books is I choose one highlighter for the first read, and then the second read, I choose a different color highlighter. And I love seeing in a book what I get from the first read and I get from the second read. Do you do that?
No, so I'm not a fan. I like the constructional intent. I don't like to mark up books. So what I like to do is I like to actually like, so after I read this chapter, I went into like I have a certain book that is like kind of like my thought vomit journal, I like to call it. So like I'll go and scribble notes and things like that. So what I like to do is actually write down, okay, 3 takeaways and what am I doing to like make that a point. So I'll never be the person, Dan, to like recite like even when we're talking here, I wasn't able to recite the exact quotes, but I can extract what it means to me.
Yes.
Right. So like even when you're talking about the Jesus thing about like Splinter, see me that, I'm like, okay, my thought process, I don't need to know the actual quote. I just need to know that, hey, and everything that I do, when I'm cooking, when I'm walking my dogs, when I'm doing this podcast, when I'm doing this thing, I'm seeing God in this. Right. And that's really my big takeaway. So I don't like to like write on books and things like that. It's just my personal thing. I just kind of like want to keep it a little bit clean. But like I love what you said, because when you kind of go through once and then you go through it second, it's just like if when we were in elementary school and we did like book reports and stuff like that, and our teacher would come back and give us some revisions, and you're like, I thought I had no punctuality issues, I thought my spelling was all good and all these things, but then you kind of become more present into it, instead of me being like, hey, I got a 10-page book a 10-page essay I need to do, and then it doesn't matter what the errors is. It's just like, okay, I can come back to center and then understand that these little mistakes can kind of get me further. So I like your method. Maybe I'll try it with a different book going forward to kind of
I would if I were you, and here's the reason being is so when I buy a book, I'll typically buy 2. Because if I really like it, I'll give it to somebody. And when I first read a book, it's typically a yellow highlighter. The second time's an orange, and usually the third time's either a green or a blue highlighter. And what I'll do is I'll read the book in its entirety. I'll highlight things that resonate with me, that kind of make me go, wow, I never thought of that. Okay. And then when I go back to the book, I find, and I always found it was like a surprise, but now I realize it's keeping me present in the book, because I'll read something and I'll be like, oh my Lord, that was so profound. Like I need to implement this. And I'll look down and it won't be highlighted. Yeah. I'll be like, how did I not see that last time? But for me, it then immediately morphs into, oh my gosh, I have raised my level of awareness. And I think in life, as we raise our level of awareness, we can achieve more things. And so for me, that's the beautiful thing about marking, and even like Kindle and all books, like you can highlight stuff in them, right? So I do the same thing whether I'm on my iPad reading a book on my iPad or a physical book, I'll always highlight. And even on the audiobooks, you can save the clips. So I'll like go back and see, did I save this clip last time? And I didn't, and why not? And I think for me, it just really brings everything in, because I'm reading the old quote and I'm like, oh my gosh, I did that, and that in my life to live that quote or continue because it was so profound 6 months ago or a year ago. Now it's like this piece is profound because my level of awareness has risen. And to me, it's super cool, brother. Super cool. Like, it's just invigorating because it makes, for me anyways, personally, it makes me want to read more. Like, what's the next chapter? Like, what did I not see in the next chapter? And for me, it just becomes this like entertainment factor to see, well, where did I go? Like let's continue to see where I went. And I think you'd really love it, brother. I think, especially knowing you, you'd really love it. And it would also create a little bit more conversation in your head saying, okay, why did I resonate with that and now resonate with this? And I think it's good because we mull those deep thoughts over in our head. And I think it makes us better people.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll definitely take that into account. For everyone who's like with the books and anything out there, like, there's a lesson from everything. Like, I'll end off by saying this, like late Kobe Bryant always said, the world is our playground. So make sure you go out and play and you try everything. So it could be a book, audio book, it could be a conversation with somebody. It's just, you just never know what you're going to learn from somebody. So these different tips and tactics, like it's awesome to kind of see those things come to fruition. So I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm like you said, I can't wait for chapter 8. I haven't gone into it yet because I really want to be focused on this episode. So I'll probably, full transparency, I'll probably read chapter 8 today and then read a couple times over the weekend and stuff like that to kind of really, really see what's kind of going into there.
That's next week, my man. Chapter 8.